Okay, good afternoon. My name is Richie Simmons. I am the sheriff here in Davidson County. Thank y'all for being with us today. A very, very happy occasion we were able to find Miss Savannah Childress. A long time, a little over a week, looking for her after she had been abducted. Just a combined effort here. But first of all, I would like to just take a moment of silence just to thank for our partners in Arkansas and Lenoka Police Department. They had an officer that was shot. We're not releasing the name, but I would just like to have just a moment of silence for a prayer for him. Thank you so much. This all started February 11th, 2021. Miss Childress, Savannah Childress, 14 years of age, was reported missing. I think she was last seen by her father, Michael Childress, around 7 o'clock. After she didn't pick up her younger sibling at the bus stop, she was reported missing, and we got into action at that time. The lead was our detective division by Sergeant Blake and Sergeant Jonathan Todd, and also Detective Dennis Dakota, which are here now, if you have questions for them. It started out that we found out that Miss Childress was using her school computers to text and use these different platforms to text the perpetrator, Mr. William Ice, that we later found out. We're sorry that we were unable to give out a lot of information, but we felt like the more information that we give out about him, that the more danger we would cause to Savannah, not knowing, and that's what we did with the public as well. We know that they had a search in Denton Saturday. We couldn't tell them not to search, but we knew, or we felt very confident that she wouldn't be found there, that she was out of state. But we couldn't give this information out to you because we were afraid it would endanger her. We've had some good players that helped us, stakeholders that helped us in this matter. We could not have done this by ourselves. My detective division did an outstanding job with what they had, but we also know that we're not an island, nor did we want to be an island. So we next contacted the State Bureau of Investigation, and in fact, they came with much help and with our forensic lab working with us. We also brought in the FBI because we knew we couldn't do this alone, and because it went across states as well. It's so helpful. But as we're going into this, we also found out that there were 5 other subjects in Alamance County that were contacted by this individual. So we contacted Alamance County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Terry Johnson, which is a good friend of mine and helps me in a lot of different cases as well. Never let off. They helped us with so much information, and their detectives were able, and hopefully we even foiled some of the other victims from coming into this by staying hot on his trail. We were able, that this past Saturday, or first of all, we gave out a silver alert, and there was a little bit of confusion over that, and we're sorry about that. We updated it to an amber alert, and I think we mistakenly gave out a message that it was canceled, and we apologize for that. But you got to remember, we're working with a lot of different entities in this, and sometimes misinformation can get out. But thank y'all for clarifying that, for setting it straight, and for getting it out right. But this past Saturday, February the 20th, 2001, she was located in Arkansas. A shootout occurred, and one of the Arkansas local police officer was shot in this matter, and the perpetrator shot himself and was killed, or later died from his self-inflicted injury. We got Miss Savannah Childress back and got her back to her family. This is still under investigation, so there's some things we can't talk about. we don't know how deep this is going to go. But it is a good story, and it's a story of happiness when everything works out like this.
Let me just say this. I want to thank the Davidson County Sheriff's Office for working with us, and also the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We found, after a consensual partial search of Mr. Ice's residence in Pennsylvania, 2 names and addresses for 2 13-year-olds in Alamance County. And upon interviewing these individuals and also seizing their school computers, we found that there was a total of 10 juveniles that had contact with Mr. Ice. I believe had we not found out from the FBI and Davidson County, we would have probably wound up with a kidnapping of one of our young females. It's very important to know that working together, what can be accomplished, and this is just an example of what will be. Sheriff Simmons has been great to work with ever since he's been sheriff here, and I laud his people for their hard work and the FBI's hard work in this endeavor. Like I say, we are very fortunate in Alamance County to have gotten the information we got and was able to immediately, with our Special Victim and Human Exploitation Unit, to get on board and start interviewing these girls and looking at their computers. We could have had victims there in Alamance County. We worked extensively, like I say, with Davidson County, and worked very hard to try to find every possible victim in Alamance County. And we found that 10 different individuals had talked to this individual through Skype. So we're very fortunate, and I want to thank the Davidson County Sheriff's Office and the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation for all the efforts put forward in this situation. Because of the working relationships, I think we have some kids that are alive today. Thank you.
We'll try to open it up for any questions that you may have. What we can't answer, we'll try to get these. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I guess just to start, can you give us a little more detail about what type of platforms these children are using on their school computers? It sounds like it's the school computer. Is there not any firewall or anything are they working around that?
Great question. And I've talked to the school system here, and we've spoke with them as well, but they're using their Chromebooks that now they're working virtual. Great reason that they need to be back in school. Our kids need to be back in school. And while they're in school, there is firewalls for this. When they're taking these tablets home, there's nothing. It's whatever's on their server at their house. And that's a big problem because they're talking to what and they're getting on what sites, no one knows. Wait a second. Raise your hand. Okay, go ahead.
Sheriff, are you saying his plan was to come here and basically get as many kids as he could?
We don't know what his plan is. We never got to speak to him. We're trying to investigate this now to see what put it back together. So that's something we're working on now. We don't know why Davidson County, why Alamance County was picked.
Follow-up question, if I may. At what point do you think he left the state? I mean, did he stay here for a while to try and catch up with some of these girls, and then at what point did he leave?
We don't know that either. We were like one step behind all the time trying to catch up with this guy. He was very elusive and very smart, intelligent how he did it. He was driving a vehicle. It was pretty easy to pick out, a red Durango with a roof, with an unusual roof top to carry things on. And when we caught him, when he was caught, he had already spray painted it black himself. Just a lot of ways that he was elusive on the platforms that he used, and platforms we'd never seen before.
Correct.
You want to
Sure, I can speak.
elaborate?
I'm Sergeant Blake, Davidson County Sheriff's Office. What we ran into is he was utilizing multiple platforms
this individual, we found him to be quite sophisticated when it came to digital media, computers, and throughout the investigation continued to follow leads and honestly continued to hit dead ends. Just the perseverance and just continuing to stay on it step by step by step and follow every single lead, waiting for an opportunity where he's made a mistake and give us an opportunity to locate him. Yeah, I won't speak to the technical side of that, but it definitely was a challenge by that weakness, and be able to exploit it. To answer the question about how long, whether or not we feel like he stayed around, after further investigation last night and an interview with the victim, we do believe they immediately left the state after she was picked up.
How is Savannah doing emotionally, if you know, if you've spoken to her personally and also physically?
As can be, I'm sorry, let me remove this. As can be expected, she's suffered a traumatic experience. She, after being recovered by Arkansas law enforcement, transported back here to Davidson County. She went to the Dragonfly House Child Advocacy Center over in Davidson County for a full forensic interview and medical exam. She filled in a lot of blanks for us, gave us a little better understanding of how things went, but she's definitely traumatized and has a long road ahead of her to recover from this.
Did she?
Let's give everybody a chance. Yes, ma'am.
Hi there. I just had a quick question about, I know at the beginning, maybe it's a question for Sheriff Simmons. At the beginning, you said you apologized for the lack of transparency. And I know a lot of people have questioned the media. Why have we not given out certain information? Do you believe that had you guys given out information on the description of the suspect's vehicle or the person's name, that could have somehow helped find her before the 10 days?
I think we did a pretty good job on it. Our main concern is Savannah's well-being. We felt like the more, and we were in constant contact with the FBI of when and what to give out, and lots of good minds here going together. We felt like the more that he thought we were after him, the more that in danger she would be. So the least we had, we were doing a good job on his trail to stay with him, to find him, and we felt like it was working. We were ready to shift in a moment's notice into changing the way we did this and ready to drop that information, but we located him.
And just as a follow-up question, you guys, I know you mentioned you changed it from a silver alert to an amber alert. Where did that discrepancy kind of come from? I know there was kind of a lot of confusion surrounding that, if she was abducted, whether she wasn't. Have you guys, now that you've gotten to ask her some more questions, was it a situation where she gave out her address? Kind of how did you guys come to that conclusion it needed to be upgraded?
It was just trying to get the state to accept our application for it. It has to be an abduction, and there was some question if there was an abduction. We felt like a 14-year-old can't give permission to be taken. You can't. She couldn't have said, that I want to go with him. She doesn't have that right. So then it's an abduction, we felt like, and we convinced the state, and they gave us the Amber Alert.
Yeah, hi.
Yes, sir.
So can you shed a little bit more light what took place once Mr. Ice arrived to Savannah's residence? Did she willingly get in his vehicle? Are you able to release any of that right now?
We're not giving that away right now. We're still trying to piece it all together ourselves, the moment of what happened.
And then just follow up, how early on, I guess, did you guys realize, or at least pen Mr. Ice as a person of interest for this case?
Is that something?
I can speak to that if you'd like.
Yeah.
We very quickly identified an alias online and multiple online identifiers to designate this individual. It was a matter of identifying who in the real world this individual was. They hide behind anonymity online and hide their identity pretty good. And it took us a while to identify. We, as most of you have seen the Amber Alert, it was noted of a Will Hedgeland was the name we were utilizing. and just determining who Will Hedgeland really was and identifying him as William Ice was a little bit of a challenge, and a little ways into the investigation before we identified that.
Just as far as Will Hedgeland, alias, was he presenting himself as a younger person, obviously? Or was it, can you give that information away? Or is
Yeah. Jonathan, you want to speak to that?
I'm Sergeant Todd. So I believe through various victims that have been spoken to in this, and the juveniles in Alamance County as well, I believe there was a time where he was presenting himself to be younger, and then we believe there was information to suggest that he later identified a potential older age that he was. So it appeared that he was presenting himself younger, and then felt, once trust or whatever it was, he felt comfortable presenting himself to be an adult. And we feel like that some of the juveniles involved knew potentially of his real age.
Can you give any more details?
Raise, who hadn't, yes, in the back. Yes, sir.
So, reports of other children here in the Piedmont tribe who have been in communication with Mr. Ice. How many other teens, ages, genders were there, and were there any other girls here in Davidson County who were in communication with Mr. Ice?
We do know of at least 2 to 3 other juveniles here in Davidson County. Majority of them were females. We do know of one particular male. It seemed to be an middle school age range that he was specifically targeting. I just want to note that these predators like this online are very good at grooming techniques. Making these children feel wanted, even though in most cases they are wanted at home already. We all know how middle school children and their emotions can be, and they're very good at exploiting these types of emotions in these children and manipulating them.
Just a follow-up to that, I know you mentioned that Skype was one of, or Sheriff Johnson mentioned Skype as one of the forms of communication. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what platforms they were using?
We know they're utilizing numerous different email accounts. Skype was used. There was what was the
Multiple anonymous chat websites and things like that. Basically anything that a Google search could yield as to anonymities, things to protect anonymity. Those sites are out there. So it was a myriad of sites used, none specific to the other. Just pretty much in that situation, individuals like that try to identify any way that they can try to stay anonymous while still maintaining conversation with the juveniles or the person, and that will leave as little footprint as possible to hinder any investigation in this situation.
And for those devices, as far as, was there any kind of way to block those different sites, or is there any communication with school officials to kind of prevent this from happening again from using those anonymous sites?
In the school, when they're in the school, they have firewalls and stuff. Outside the school, they don't, and that's a big danger for it. The COVID virus is hurting a lot of ways, and this is a way even separating our kids is they're easy to be groomed by these predators. Yes, ma'am.
Sheriff Simmons, you described this as a happy ending, which I agree she is home safe, but at the same time, we do not know what happened in that 9 days. Do you have a clearer picture of what went on in those 9 days? I don't want to ask specifics. Was she assaulted at any point in time?
And we're working on that now. We're not ready to answer that question quite yet, as we are. This is still a very vital investigation, and it could go deeper. We're hoping that we can even go further than the lives that have been saved from this. We're hoping it can, but we can't answer that right yet. Yes, ma'am.
I apologize if this has already been brought up before, but why did ICE focus on students in the triad specifically? Does he have any connections to this area?
He came from Pennsylvania. We don't know at this time why he chose the Piedmont.
And what was the first app or website that contacted
I don't know if we know exactly the first time.
No, I don't know that we know
I don't think we
that.
want to speak to that right now.
Yeah, this might be something. And they're keeping me straight. Yes, sir.
You said that you want to go deeper with this investigation and possibly find out more. Is there possibly a history of Mr. Ice doing this?
There were charges in Pennsylvania for a similar. He was wanted under similar charges.
He just didn't seek to try it out. He's already been doing this.
Can you expand on that? Like what you know about the different cases that he was charged on?
What was his warrants for
I can speak to it.
in Pennsylvania?
We know Mr. Ice was actively had actively been charged for crimes against a child, physical crimes against a child. In addition to that, we understand he had been basically caught in a exploitation sting by law enforcement up in that area. He was actively on the run, knew he had warrants when he came here to pick up Savannah.
Yes, ma'am.
And I know a lot of parents right now are very concerned, they're worried about the safety of their children. You mentioned more than 10 here in Alamance County and in Davidson County combined. I'm sure there are more than 10 people he was reaching out to. What can you guys say in regards to not warning those parents while he was still out on the run about why you guys didn't disclose that information so that they could maybe be on a more of an eye, keep an eye out on their kids, or kind of what you guys can say to the fact that you guys are still dedicated to keeping this community safe?
And we, you know, it's a judgment call of everything we did. You know, there's no written rule that you do this will happen in this, and we were just doing the very best we could. I think prevention would be is a cure, you know, of watching your kids. Your kids have no right to privacy in your home. You need to be in their business. I'm a father of 3. We teach a class here in Davidson County called TAME. It's for junior high. It starts in the 7th grade, but we do a part of that class on social media. And it's this is something we're going to push on. We're going to push this in our TAME class of this can happen to you. This, you could be Savannah. And that's what we need to be preaching to our kids as we go about. They're here. They're out here. They may pose as a 13-year-old and not be at all. You don't know, and that's the dangers of it. Social media has positives. It has a lot of negatives as well.
If I can add to that, Chair.
Yes.
Just let me know Scott Williams, SBI, just so let me know the decisions that were made on this case by the FBI, the Sheriff's Office, and the SBI were all made with the first priority being the safety of Savannah. That was the only thing we were considering was her safety. So any decision we made was her safety, not necessarily to prevent future actions. We hope it could prevent future actions, but that was number one priority, was her safety. So that's why a lot of the information we had to keep close to the vest, because we're talking, this was a desperate man. He was wanted for the same type stuff in Pennsylvania for a recent charge that happened the weekend before we left, and I think he was skipped a court date on a similar type charge, so we were really trying to protect her safety. But one thing, make no doubt about it, as soon as we knew where William Ice was, the moment we knew where he was, we put a plan into action to grab him. There wasn't any delay in that. As soon as we knew where he was and had a chance to grab him, we grabbed him.
It seemed like we were about a step behind the whole time until it just come together, and he made a mistake.
So did you guys know he was in Arkansas at the time and kind of notified Arkansas authorities, or?
We did notify him as soon as we knew where he was at. We knew he was in a truck stop to start with, and then it ended up in the McDonald's. He'd moved to a McDonald's, so we were able to keep up tracking at that time. Yes, sir.
Sheriff, could you give any more details about, was there a particular break that led you to be able to locate him in that spot in Arkansas? Can you say what that, can you give any more details about that?
We're not going to give the details of what devices or what we use to do it. You know, we're going to be doing this time and time, but just know that we do. We work hard. It was an effort from the time she went missing until we found her. It was a work, and it was a work in art. I mean, this is some hard-working, non-sleeping bunch that I was worried about some of them. I had one, I about ordered him just to go home. I mean, it was just going down. But these guys are. That's a great story in itself. Is how one that we could everybody you work with this many agencies through the country and nobody said anything. The word didn't get out because if it did, it would have been a danger to Savannah. We were able to keep and work and coordinate and keep it down. But all these agencies coming together to work for a purpose, and that purpose come and the plan come out. It doesn't always work that way, but it was beautiful this time.
I think the biggest break in the case, and most officers probably agrees, when we were able to tie the Alamance County students to the Davidson County students. That was our, not to get into it, we won't discuss any of the specifics of how we're able to do that, but that was clearly the break that we needed towards the end of last week.
That was a push moment.
Yep.
And I assure you, once we found out who the victims possibly could be in Alamance County, law enforcement was with them on top of it day and night to make sure, at the time we didn't know where he was, that he would grab another juvenile.
You know, and I'll think back, and I've watched a documentary on Ted Bundy, and he started out in Western United States and ended in Florida, and that was because we didn't have the technology we have now. Agencies didn't talk that much. They do now, and we come together, and there was no egos in this bunch. Everybody did their part, what it took to get the job done. And, you know, is one particular part more important than the other? You say that's pretty awesome, too. Up to the FBI, you know, they work just as humbly as everybody else, working with us to make this happen. But it happens, and we work together all the time. I call this man all the time. He's kind of been my little mentor sheriff all along. You know, he looks after me, keeps me straight. Who hadn't asked a question yet? I don't think you've asked one yet.
Sheriff, I know the agent mentioned that Mr. Ice was involved in a sting operation. I guess, is it clear as to why he was out, like why he wasn't behind bars if he had been arrested in this sting operation in Pennsylvania?
He'd made bond. He'd bonded out in Pennsylvania.
And the second warrant that was obtained for him the following weekend, he was running from that one, so he had never been arrested yet.
Yes, sir.
Is it really accurate to say she left with him voluntarily? And then
14-year-old can't leave voluntarily. It's not possible.
I understand that, but I'm saying when you discovered her, when she was found, was she still with him voluntarily? Or was she trying to get home to her parents?
We can't basically tell you exactly what happened in that residence that particular time. And unfortunately, at this time, we can't comment on her status when she was found in the car. That's part of what is still currently under investigation.
These girls, though, they think this is a romantic thing. Is that how you're couching it? You know, they think that this is some sort of romantic encounter. Is this the bait that these predators are using, or is there anything else that
they
should know?
They do utilize certain aspects of that to make these young girls think that they're blow up their ego that an older guy is talking to me and so on and so forth. And yet that is part of the grooming techniques that these predators use to build trust with these girls. Absolutely.
But make no mistake about it, if they can't get where they need to get that way, then they will resort to just flat out physical abduction.
And that's a danger, you know, with the Amber Alert. It's a great thing. It's a double-edged sword, too, because it's when we're afraid, you know, if his identity was out, we were scared. We were scared for her. Who hadn't asked a question yet would like to ask one? Yes, sir.
When something like this happens, the clock kind of starts. Is there a certain timeline that you're working in your heads where the probability of solving the case becomes harder?
No timeline. I wouldn't think, but I'll let my investigators answer that question.
I would like to make one comment on that. I think, in our opinion, is when you establish a timeline, you stop working. And you hear things on the news about first 48 hours are the most important. We don't work like that because tentatively you lead people to believe certain things may or may not happen after a certain timeline. We work until we either find her, and that's it. So if it takes 2 weeks, if it takes 3 weeks, we don't put timelines on things. Our timeline was to bring her home safely, and we successfully did that as a whole.
to speak to that, internally in our agency, in our division specifically, I think we as investigators were all over the board, and I can speak personally. There were days when I came in and times during the day that my opinion changed on what the outcome was going to be to this case, and it was all over the board. And I think we kept each other motivated, and without a team, we couldn't have done it. So to speak to that, as an individual, yeah, we get to things in our head and anticipated outcomes, and those outcomes change as the case evolves. And as a team, we work to keep each other motivated and optimistic and working full speed.
Can you talk about,
Yes.
can you talk about how tough this was on your investigators from the standpoint you know she is with somebody, and from everything I'm reading, who could take her life at any moment, and you're scared to death that a little bit of information might get out and cause something like that to happen. How tough was this on you and your
Oh, it's very tough, and not knowing what her condition is at the time. You know, we went through this for several days not knowing until really Saturday we knew. Or we had an idea, and then we've got to put a plan together to get it stopped, to get him in custody and get her, you know, before it falls apart again. You know, so yeah, it's extremely tough. Emotions run high, and then you've got this and the rest of your county to run too. This wasn't the only thing happening by no means. We had 2 standoffs with hostage situations, and we've had to drag a lake and for a drowned body. I mean, it's never ending. This is the toughest job I've ever had by far. Nobody ever said it'd be this way. Yes, ma'am.
Is there any information that you can give us about William Ice outside of his warrants and his arrest, maybe his family life? Is there anything that you guys can disclose to us about the type of person we're dealing with?
Probably not at this time. I don't see a benefit really of doing it. I don't think we want to give that out right yet. And let me introduce Captain Burns. He's captain of our CID, our detective division. He didn't introduce himself. Great comment, just didn't introduce himself. Go ahead.
I would just like to say, you know, we don't think it's fair at this point to converse about William Ice's personal life outside of our investigation.
Well, can you say whether it was his personal life that led you to believe that if any additional information got out that would put Savannah more in danger, or was it from his criminal background?
Well, we knew that he had tried to harm 2 Ohio troopers that were trying to arrest him, so we knew he was a dangerous man. So with that fact, we knew he had it in his ability to harm someone, and that's what really got our attention. But like I said before, there's no game plan for each one. Each crime's like a fingerprint. There's no one the same. So we work on them differently, and we don't have a blueprint, and there's nothing to say. You know, it's sometimes we're human too. We get it wrong, but we try to put our best heads forward, and that's why we collaborate and we work together, and we come up with the best plan of solutions, and it worked, and it was good. Yes, sir.
By any chance, do you know what his intention was, where he was planning to take Savannah next, being in Arkansas? Was there another place he was going, or?
We didn't.
And I have one question for Special Agent Williams, I believe. We know that he was communicating with 10 juveniles in Alamance County, several here in Davidson County. Was he communicating with juveniles across the Piedmont Triad in other counties of the state?
We don't know that yet. We'll look into that as we move forward once we can maybe have access to his computer and get a better footprint of who he was communicating with. So we really don't know that just yet. But a lot of the evidence, and we need to thank our counterparts with the FBI in Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania State Police. They were a big help in this. They interacted. They worked just as hard as we were working down here dealing with his family and stuff up there. So right now, I think his computer and hard drive stuff may be. I don't think they're in our possession just yet.
They're in the FBI's possession.
FBI's possession. So at some point, we'll have a better idea and a footprint of what his history was.
As we carry on. Yes, sir, you were up
So
first.
how's this collaboration going to move forward, I guess, continuing the investigation? You have multiple agencies involved, and it sounds like you're still investigating it. So who's going to take lead, or are you still just going to evenly divide that?
We're going to divide. We're going to work on our case, our charges we had, and if it ventures out in someone else's jurisdiction, then we'll definitely share our information as we always do.
So you just mentioned Pennsylvania State Police also helped, of course, the FBI. So is that part, are they done right now with this, since they've got his computers, etc.?
No, they're not done. We're definitely not done, and we'll collaborate with our jurisdictions.
And then taking a look back, do you know how long Mr. Ice was in contact with Savannah or the other children in the area?
We won't answer that.
We don't have an exact time frame.
We don't know. Yes, sir.
You mentioned earlier your father, and there are lots of very petrified, concerned parents, rightfully so, across the region. Now, you touched on it a little bit earlier, but what would be your advice to them to make sure that this doesn't happen to their family?
Get in there. Go ahead.
Well, I would definitely say, especially as a parent, we've really got to understand the type of apps that are on our children's phone and who they're communicating with on these apps. I would encourage all parents to encourage their children. If you can't text them from your cell phone, then don't communicate with them. That's the best form of communication to have with someone. But there's so many of these apps out here that nobody can even ever retrieve the conversation the second that it happens. And so that would just be the biggest lesson I think that we all could, is really look at the apps on our children's phone and encourage them to communicate through their through a regular text message instead of using some of these apps that are generated from foreign countries.
Mm-hmm. Please. It's Major Robert Miller.
Major Robert Miller, to tell in Agent Williams, our leaders of our state and other states, our kids need to be in school. We got lucky with this one. If your kids come home after school, then they're there with you. Working parents who have to leave a child at school with a system like this and the predators like this out there, we got lucky with this one. Like Scott said, we'll never know who he's touched or anybody else has touched on a media platform that's in our homes that we have no firewalls to stop it. Our kids need to be in school with some kind of precaution so this doesn't happen. This has opened up a window for any predator out there to walk right on in. As a parent, that's why I'm so adamant about this. I don't mean to overstep both sheriffs, but I think they would agree to me. Our leaders need to take a stand on something and safeguard these children. Is COVID as worse as what could have happened to her? I don't know as a parent. That's very dangerous.
And, we come up with different programs, too, and we just have licensed a TAME in Davidson County. It's a new program, and it stands for Teenage Alcohol Marijuana Education. It's helping our kids make the proper decisions about drugs, but as we built this program with our school system and our principals, and we did it right here in the sheriff's office, and we went into social media as part of it. And we've got one of our DAs and one of our local judges, Judge Mary Covington, is helping teach this program through our 7th grade classes. So this is something that, is anything foolproof? No, it's not. But it's a tool, and we get out. But have something for these kids to do. Being on social media, do it like when my kids were growing up, we had a computer in the living room. We didn't go off into the bedroom and do it. We had one TV, and it was in the living room. My wife and I can watch. Be a parent. Be a parent. Watch what your kids are on. Watch who your kids are talking to. Know who they're talking to. You may not be the coolest parent in the world. They'll come to thank you one day. Discipline's a good thing. I think you in the blue, I don't think you've had a chance. Okay. Yes.
Before we leave, whoever spoke, would y'all spell your first and last names for us so we have them in your positions?
Mhm.
I'm Scott Williams, Special Agent in charge of the SBI.
You need him to spell his name?
Regular spelling?
Yes, ma'am, common spelling.
I'm Terry Johnson, Sheriff, Alamance County, North Carolina.
Richie Simmons, Sheriff of Davidson County, RICHIE.
Sergeant David Blake, BLAKE for the common spelling for the first.
Sergeant Jonathan Todd, common spelling.
Major Robert Miller, Davidson County.
Captain Mike Burns, Davidson County.
Okay. Well, let me say again, thank you for your concern by getting the word out, getting this message out. Well, that's what we wanted to do. We do want to be transparent, but we've got to also remember we have victims as well. And that's why maybe we're hard to get hold of. It's hard to do both, talk and get your job done. And we were moving pretty fast in this, and things happening that y'all didn't see. So thank you for being understanding. Thank you for helping us get the word out, and thank you for coming today. Thank you so much.
If we get everybody, once they get everything taken care of, it's broke down, we'll get you out of the building.